Welcome to today's webinar titled The Future of Financial Reporting. Timely, accurate and accessible financial reporting, budgeting and forecasting is critical for organisations irrespective of size, be they for profits or non-profits. Making it easier to have financial planning, analysis and reporting across an entire organisation requires the proper tools. Bain & Company estimates the number of companies scaling up digitisation and automation technologies will double in the next 2 years. The COVID-19 crisis is already accelerating this timeline, and digitisation will be critical to executing business strategies. Whether you're an MYOB Greentree, MYOB Advanced, or other ERP business software user, we believe that you will get value out of today's presentation. So thank you for joining us today as Star joins with Phocas Software to present on financial reporting, budgeting and forecasting. As many of you may already know, my name is Norman Hall and I'm the co-owner of Star Business Solutions and their marketing director. I've got the easy job today as your host. I'd like to introduce you to Craig Medlin, who is the technical sales manager with Phocas. Craig will be doing the heavy lifting today in the presentation. A few housekeeping issues before we start. We'll have a Q&A session at the end, so don't forget to write your questions into the chat or question area as we go along, otherwise you might forget. Today's webinar is being recorded and we will send you a link to the recording within 24 hours of the webinar's completion. If you have any questions that you don't remember to write down today or we don't cover today, please feel free to email me direct. And now, over to Craig.
Thanks for that, Norm, and thank you to everybody for attending. It's great to see so many people coming out, and we're very excited to not only show you Phocas, but to be working with Star and helping Star customers, whether they're on Greentree or Advanced, to really get more benefits out of the data in those systems. So today's agenda, we've got around the 40-45 minutes for this session. And in that session, what we're going to cover is we're going to do a bit of scene setting. As this is the first time a lot of you may be hearing or seeing Phocas, we're going to just paint a bit of a picture for you of where we fit in your organization and how we might be able to help. We're going to talk about our financial statements product, the governance and security we have with that, and the kind of challenges that we're going to be able to help you solve. We're also going to do an introduction to our budgeting and forecasting to show you some of the functionality we have in this space. And most importantly, we're going to do a demo. We'll try and spend as much time as we can in that demo to really give you a taste of what Phocas is about and how we might be able to help. Seeing is always believing. And at the end, as Norm mentioned, we'd like to gather your questions and answer those as we go. So first, a little bit of scene setting. So for those that don't know, Phocas is actually a very well-known business intelligence tool. We work in the wholesale, distribution, manufacturing and retail spaces predominantly, but we do have customers in not-for-profit, in aged care, and a number of other sectors as well. But really what we're about is making the data that you're capturing accessible and easy to use, regardless of your skill set in a business. So a lot of businesses may be using Phocas in, if you're a sales-driven organization, we might be helping you with sales and purchasing and inventory analysis or manufacturing analysis. We also today, we're going to be talking about the financial component. So being able to produce your P&Ls and your balance sheets, not just produce them, but analyze them and share them with those that need to see them. And making sure that we're removing some of that heavy load that often sits on the shoulders of the finance team to produce data and get data out to those that need it. So that's what we're going to be talking mostly about today, as well as how that now extends into your budgeting and forecasting processes to move away from some of those spreadsheet challenges that we often have. So Phocas itself, you'll see, is a cloud-based product, and it can be used whether you're using MYOB Greentree, MYOB Advanced, or even if you're running, say, on Greentree and have some ancillary data systems that might be external source data that you need to use. Phocas can also help with that. So let's just talk a little bit about the traditional reporting that we see. So often we'll have our Greentree or our advanced system kind of sitting at the top of the tree where we're inputting data in. We then have some financial controllers or CFOs, a mix of our finance management, producing data that now needs to be actually provided down to our different department heads. And often what will happen is people will have questions or be unsure about what they're actually looking at. And as a result, those questions have to be fed right back up to, say, to our bookkeeper. So we're involving quite a lot of people to actually answer what can sometimes be, or what might seem as an easy question to answer. But because we don't have quite the systems in place to do this, it can be quite cumbersome. We're using very complex spreadsheets that have very complex formulas, and one change can break everything. The Phocas approach is a little different. We actually sit, say, Greentree or your ERP or like Advanced at the center of your business where it belongs, and we actually put Phocas around the edges of that. So now, instead of people going to individuals to get the data, they can now self-serve and get the data they need. And we've got the ability to synchronize the data on quite regular intervals between Phocas and your ERP system. So we've got people inputting data and analyzing data, and not having that lag of having people waiting for somebody to do something before I can actually answer my question. So this more modern approach of enabling people to get the data they need when they need it to do their job and be more informed is really at the center of what Phocas is about. And we're doing that with our financial statements product. Now, our financial statements product, and you'll see some of this in the demo, it gives us the ability to produce financial statements, but also analyze them. And you'll see when we talk about analysis, it's all about being easy to use and following a train of thought when looking at data. We're also able to customize these, because in a lot of instances, you may be consolidating multiple businesses together, and it could be all on the same ERP system, or maybe through acquisition, you've acquired a business that is on a different ERP system that you might be migrating to Greentree or Advanced in the future, but you need to bring all their historical data in, and you need to be able to tailor how that actually looks. So we have all that ability inside Phocas. And often financial data is, as I mentioned, it's spreadsheet driven, it's very numbers heavy, but not all the users often want to consume it that way. So we can visualize our data as well and bring that to life in a way that makes sense for the intended audience. Now, when we talk about intended audience, we often will need to control what people can see. When we talk around financials, it's often quite sensitive data that we have in there. So security and governance and control of what people can see is a big part of what Phocas does. We can use some of the security credentials or layers that you may have set up in the ERP system, but we can also extend on that, particularly when we're talking about multi-source data. You can limit people to even further than maybe what the ERP might allow. based on those other sources. And what you can see on this slide here is we've basically got the same statement, but what we're actually showing is what the CEO might see when they log into a dashboard or into a profit and loss statement might be different to the branch manager logging into the same statement. And that's because the governance and security is limiting what that person can see. So things like wages and commissions just may not be available to them. Maybe they only see their branch or their cost center or their division. So you've got a lot of control, but it doesn't mean that you have to build lots of separate reports for them. You can still have that single version of truth that sits over the top, and people only see what's relevant to them. So that's the financial analysis, or the analysis part of what we're going to be showing you in a moment. We are also going to spend some time looking at budgeting and forecasting. So this is an extension of that financial analysis that we were looking at. And very similar to like what we showed you before on the finance slides, is quite often I'm guessing that this flow chart here looks potentially fairly familiar to a lot of people in how they may go about budgeting. You know, a budget process is kicked off, and it involves downloading some data, cutting, pasting, using formulas. It's sent to the people that need to input data into it. We might go back to a drawing board, and we have different versions. It goes back up through the tree and just kind of loops and loops and loops and loops. Hopefully you don't get to quite to 42, but this is a fairly common process that a lot of people would potentially go through. It's often very static. It's standalone. It's disconnected. So once we've exported the data, that's it. It can be linear. A lot of assumptions end up being made with this because we're not actually connected to live data, and it's always retrospective. Now, Phocas tackles it a little bit differently. So very much like the finance way of thinking about things, budgeting forecasting really extends on that. So we put it all that data at the center of the business that is interacting with our ERP and HR or payroll data, all our different data sources that might be required for us to produce a budget or to have accurate financial analysis. And we want to have people interacting with that data on a day-to-day basis potentially. So not just something that's done annually, but might be something that's reviewed much more often. And as a result of doing it this way, we're not so static anymore. We can be a lot more collaborative. We can really bring in more data, and I'll actually show you how we do this. And we can not just do this once, but we can continually plan going forward. So making something fast and easy and secure means that when, like we saw in 2020, when things can get a bit rocky or change rather quickly on us, we need to be able to react quite quickly. And that's one of the features of Phocas that will allow you to do that. So just to summarize, really Phocas is not just financial analysis, but also analytics, as well as being able to budget and forecast. So we really become a company-wide financial planning and analysis solution, and it's all in a single platform. So you're not running into different products to do different things. It really becomes your single version of truth. All right, so that's probably enough slides for now. We're going to jump into the demo. Definitely encourage you to enter your questions in as we're going. Very happy for you to enter them as we're going. Okay, so let's talk about Phocas and some financial analysis and budgeting. As mentioned earlier, Phocas is a cloud-based product, so we don't care where you're accessing Phocas from. We are device agnostic. We don't mind if you're running phones, tablets, screens in the office. You can use Phocas any way that you want. It is available anywhere, anytime on any device. And like in the slides we're talking about, the ability to visualize data. So this may be how a lot of people in your organization may start their day. So this particular dashboard, I've actually got some operational data sitting up here at the moment where I can see a sales trend as per my invoice data. I can see my territory performance, variance year on year, and how I'm tracking against budget. So this is some of our operational data, but we can also be looking at our financial data as well. So on this same dashboard where I've got some operational information, I can also have my financial information. So I've got my P&L here where I've got my current, previous, my budget and my forecast, and highlighting what the actual variances are. And we'll drill into these in just a moment. But just to highlight that it doesn't have to just be numbers in Phocas. You can also see I've got a forecast trend where I've actually got my actuals and my future adjusted forecast numbers going forward, both at the total level and at the revenue level, and even tracking some KPIs around that, how I'm actually tracking what's above budget is above forecast or below. We ultimately provide you with the training and guidance to really build these to be what you want to look when you analyze your business. It is a very easy to use self-service product. This is just an example of some of the things that you might actually want to do. But if we're going to actually look at some of this, let's actually drill into one of these. So let's actually look at our P&L here. So any Phocas dashboard can be drilled through if the user is allowed to. As we touched on in the slides, there is a lot of security and governance, so people will only see the data relevant to them. And that can also mean that maybe they're a very limited user and they can't drill through. But assuming they can drill through, you can actually take something from a dashboard and drill through it to ask more questions. So whether you're using Greentree or you're using Advanced, what this tool allows you to do is look at your P&L. So what you can see here is a pretty standard looking P&L structure where I'm tracking my current, my previous, my budget and my forecast, and highlighting the variances between them. Now in Phocas, we can change what date range we're looking at any time. So if I wanted to do something as simple as backdate this 1 month, I can, or 2 months, or whatever the case may be. You can also load in things like if you run off fiscal calendars like a 445, or you want to look at fiscal years. It's completely up to you as an end user. So we don't just have the current month P&L and last month's P&L. We can chop and change what this actually looks like. You can even go back a couple of years if you want to, as long as you've got the data. And this particular P&L view is, while a pretty standard looking one, I can actually drill into it and say, well, what makes up the numbers underneath these? So I can actually see what is actually contributing to those overall costs. Now, some of you may be multi-divisional or multiple cost centers, whatever the case may be, you can actually do analysis on that as well. So I'm going to use country in my case, where I can actually add additional levels. So now when I look at my $5.4 million in operating expenses, I can actually see what the contribution is for each of my divisions. If I want to concentrate on my Australian division, I might be drawn to the fact that compared to budget and last year, my bad debt number is really quite high. So if I want to understand why, I can actually drill through the transaction to the transactional level and see what made up that particular number. So you can actually see right down to journal level without needing to be able to log into the ERP and run a query direct against the ERP. So a Phocas user doesn't have to be a Greentree or an advanced user. They can be completely independent. So, and this is obviously security controllable, but if you want to know how a number was made up, maybe there's a reversal or an elimination that's missing, you can see that very quickly and easily. And everything in Phocas can be exported at the click of a button very quickly and easily. Stay on the profit and loss for a moment. So what you've seen so far is the ability to look at my current, my previous, my budget, and add in some additional levels. You will also notice I've got the series of buttons down the left here. These ultimately are tailored to you and your business in what you would like to see. And these really allow us not just to produce statements, but to analyze the data underneath them. So for example, if I click back on country, I might want to look at my Australian business. So I can actually highlight the row and click on Phocas. Now I'm actually just limited to just that particular country. If I now click on category, I can see my income and my expenses and everything like that, and how it relates to Australia. Now, when you're sharing information with someone that might not be in accounts, a negative $23 million in income could be a bit of a scary thought. So you can actually inverse these and switch them around and make the things like income positive and things like costs negative, just to make it a bit more palatable for the non-financial people that may be using this data. You can keep drilling through, you can change your views. If we want to look at things like variances for the last month or something like that, we can chop and change this and see that my operating expenses have actually increased quite significantly last month compared to the month prior. And I can drill right down into the actual accounts with the account names and see where some of those variances are actually occurring. So we've got quite a lot of not only just the ability to produce statements, but also the ability to go beyond them and analyze the data within them very kind of quickly and easily. Now, we will ship this with a profit and loss, a balance sheet, a cash flow, and a trial balance out of the box, as well as giving you the ability to create your own statements. And that's quite an important thing to note, because often if we're consolidating data or you've got different audiences, you might have board users and branch managers or product managers that need access to financial data, but there's certain things on the board statement that might not be relevant to other users. So we're actually able to produce our own statements in here as well. So we can create additional statements or clone them, or even if I just want to make a change to an existing statement, I can. And a change could be something as simple as changing the names of the groups or changing the calculations and how they're derived. It could also be adding additional calculations or groups that may be more relevant for the intended audience for this particular statement. And you don't have to make any changes in your ERP system. These are all done in Phocas. So if you want to trial a new chart of account structure, or you want to, you're doing a consolidation and you need to roll up a bunch of different businesses into one, how you want that to actually look, you can actually pick in this particular, for this particular statement, you can pick how that actually comes together. We do bring your entire chart of accounts across, even when it's a consolidation, allowing you to pick which accounts belong into which group. So you can nominate which accounts are going to go into which group for this particular statement. So you don't have to do this manually in Excel every single month, or exports and imports or anything like that. It can be a very set it up, make changes as required, but it's all about enabling those end users, regardless of their skill set, to get access to the data that they need. So just looking at the time, we will move into the budgeting functionality, but I really want to make sure that everyone got a taste of some of the analytics that we can actually perform using Phocas. So the ability to look at my statements, whether it's a profit and loss or a balance sheet or whatever the case may be, being able to look at those, look at the values in the hierarchy, being able to manipulate it, but also drill through it to any level that makes sense for me. We'll actually jump into the actual budgeting functionality. So our budgets, as you'll notice here, are actually derived from our financial statement product that we were just looking at. So you don't have to export the data into a spreadsheet anymore, either bring it over with zeros or load in some data. We'll actually take care of all of that and give you this structure here, where I can actually see my chart structure. I've actually populated it with data from 12 months in the past based on actuals. That might not always be how you want to do it, so you can actually nominate to import data from your previous budget, because the 2020 data was quite rocky, but now that there's hopefully a bit more stability, we might actually base it on last year's budget that we actually set. Now I can expand these out, and you can see I've loaded those 3 countries like what we were using in the financial statements views. Now this structure of being able to look at the chart and then the country and then the accounts might not be really how I think about things, so I can change the order in which things are displayed, and different users can have different orders depending on what they want to see. So now when I expand out Australia, I can actually see things like my income, or I can see my operating expenses and see all the detail behind that. Now it's got a very Excel look and feel, quite deliberately, because a lot of people do use a spreadsheet as their way of budgeting. So we haven't removed that functionality of being able to write formulas or have multiple tabs, but we've really worked hard to make sure that some of those grievances or the problems that often are associated with using a spreadsheet are resolved. And an example of that might be this workflow function that you can actually see here on my screen. Workflow means that we don't have to email this, export this, email this to 10 different people in the organization, have them make their changes and try and consolidate it all back. We now have a living, working version that we can actually choose to ask different people to work on different parts of this. So if these 2 accounts needed to be worked on by Andy or by Alex, we can actually choose to send these over to them. We can make changes before we send it, but when we send it over, it now means that we won't be making changes to it. They will, but they're not making changes in an offline version where we then have to try and consolidate it back. There is also an approval process in there as well. So I might have sent it to Andy, and then Andy might go, actually, Alex is probably who I need to contribute to some of these. So he can actually send it over to Alex. Alex can make his changes, submit it back to Andy, and then back to me. It doesn't have to come back to me to be able to send it to Alex. When something is submitted back, you have the option of accepting and rejecting that. There is a workflow history, so you can see when we start assigning things off, who has worked on what. So we've got that audit trail of what's actually going on. But to make changes, obviously we can type in numbers in here, we can write formulas, things like that, but we also ship some very nifty features. So something like accountancy. Last year we spent $3,500 on accountancy. We may be allocating a little bit more to it this year. So we might also want to base that on last year's actuals. So I actually want to pick up all the peaks and troughs of the previous year, I don't want it spread just evenly, because you can see I have some zeros in there, and I can do that, and it will actually distribute as a percentage the adjustment into the periods where this actual fees actually occur. So making it very, very easy to make an adjustment. You can also grow things by percentage. So 5% on last year, 10% on last year. Hopefully, if they're expense accounts, you're dropping it down by 5. You can really choose how this actually works very, very quickly and easily. Now, working out some of these might also require us to actually have some working lines or some sum lines. So we need somewhere to do some working out. So maybe we want to add a line, and this is number of customers, for example, that we want to have, and we're going to enter in some numbers and spread those across, and then have our formulas working against those. So you can reference these lines as you need them very quickly and easily. But when we actually publish this back to our analysis, we're just going to link at the account level. We don't have to bring across all of the working out. We can just bring across the finished products. Now, something that I really like about what this product can also do, at the moment, we're looking mostly at our GL data, but you might recall at the top of my dashboard, I actually had some operational data as well. And we can use that data in our financial budget. So, for example, for our income, we might actually want to not just have a single GL line for income, but maybe we actually want to connect to our sales database, where we've actually got a lot more detail about sales. So I can actually choose to affect income from my sales database. I just wanted to go use 12 months in the past, in my case, but I actually want to budget at a different level. I just don't want to have a single GL line. Maybe we've got some customers that will budget down to a customer level or a rep level or a product class level. So you can actually introduce another level of detail that is normally excluded from our financial budget. And I am going to link it by country in this case. I'm just going to affect Australia, because we might have different rules for our other divisions. And I'm actually going to use all of my product groups. So I'm a lighting distribution business, and I have these 5 product groups. By doing that, what you'll now see is I end up with a new tab. And if I expand this out, I now have my sales by my different product classes. I still have all that same workflow functionality and spreads and formula features that we would normally have, but now we're actually using our operational data to drive our budget. So I can now assign this off to my sales teams or out to individual reps to actually input their numbers. So we're getting them to budget at a level that makes sense, and they're the ones that actually know what the numbers are going to be. So we can get them adding the data in at a level that makes sense to them. But back on our budget, the one we're creating, we're now actually benefiting from their hard work. So they're able to put all their budget numbers in, and we're actually putting those numbers directly into our financial budget. So we can actually see what the actual outcome is. Even though we've only got a single GL line for sales, they're actually using these 5 product groups to actually create it. Now, the other really neat thing is they might do all this work so we get our GL budget, which is great for us, but we can also choose to publish this back to the sales database as well. So not only are we benefiting from it, but the hard work they're putting in also benefits them. So they actually get a budget as well. So we don't have to have our sales team create a sales budget and then ask them to do our financial budget as well. It's basically do the work once and benefit twice out of it. Very, very neat functionality. Just conscious of the time. So what we've covered so far is what we actually have is the ability to take our financial data into a budget, control what people can see. So all the governance that we've spoken about already flows through this. We can choose to assign things off to different people. Making changes to our budget is quite easy using a lot of that kind of standard spreadsheet functionality of being able to write formulas or reference different tabs. We can also bring data from other sources, such as a sales or an operation or a jobs database, or if you're a project-driven business and you want to bring that more operational data into your budget process, you can. You also have the ability to enter in things like variables around maybe new starters, where you want to enter in when you're expecting new staff to come in, and be able to reference this maybe back in some of your operating budget. So you might want to be looking at things like, I don't know, computer costs, and you want to have these equal to a number multiplied by a different tab. So we can do that where it will actually do those calculations, and we can see, instead of it just referencing a very complicated string to figure out what it's actually talking to, and it's B57 or something like that, we can simply just click on it and it will take us to where it's actually referencing. So very, very easy to use, very easy to control. The last thing I wanted to show you before we move into the Q&A is we also have in this a headcount driver. So this means that we're not just having to look at our operational data or have some variables around headcounts. We also have the ability to actually bring in some of our HR or our payroll data, where we can actually bring in our employees. There is an import wizard, so from your payroll system, you can export the data. You can also manually enter them in here as well, where you can actually have where people started, what salaries. We're not very good payers here, unfortunately, but you can see we've got our salaries, our bonuses, our commissions. Are they full-time? What's their cost? What adjustments are we actually going to make to these employees during this next budget period? What's the adjustment? And it will actually calculate what the adjustment costs actually are for these particular employees. There's also a benefits function where you can come in and create different benefits, whether they're for super or whatever the case may be. So we can actually create our benefits in here, set up what the calculation method actually is, what percentage, are there any ceilings or floors or caps on that, what GL codes are they actually joined to, and creating a plan for our different employees. So whether they're overseas, where we have to have different tax rates, or interstate, we can actually take those benefits into consideration when calculating what the cost of these employees are. Giving us also that workflow functionality where we can control what people can see. So we can assign these over by division to those that need to contribute to it. And it gives us an output of, the number of employees we've got, or what the head count is. We can be looking at the counts, or we can be looking at the actual remuneration value, including benefits. And these are all referenceable fields, so we can use them back in our budgeting process to cater for staff movements, maybe people leaving or new starters coming on. It will actually bring those numbers back into our budget. So hopefully that's given you a pretty good idea of what Phocas financial statements and budgeting and forecasting is about. With the time we've got left, it'd be great to see if there's any questions that have actually come up.
Okay, thanks, Craig. I've heard it all before, but I still picked up a few more points from today's presentation. BI software certainly has come a long way. Don't laugh, but I can remember back to the days when we all had monochromatic screens, and when Lotus 123 was new. Yeah, it's showing my age because it predates Excel. Yeah, I'm getting a bit old. We have a few questions already, 3 in fact. So everyone who's watching, please throw in your questions to the chat field, and we'll go through them progressively. The first question I have on my screen here is from Trish, and she wanted to know where does the budget source from? Is it from our system, or can you upload it from an Excel source? Sorry, an external source like Excel.
Yep. So it can be sourced from, it will primarily be sourced from your ERP. So if you're using Greentree or Advanced or whatever systems, other legacy data you want us to bring in, that would actually really make your baseline of data. If we need to use some external source data as well to build the picture that you want to see, we can do that. We are once removed from the ERP, so we do have that ability.
Okay. The second question I've got here is from Kiri. Can you export information out into Excel? And I suppose adding on to that, because I'm curious, can you do it into other formats as well, PDF or whatever?
Yeah, so the financial statements supports both Excel and PDF. So you are able to export the data. You are also able to publish your budget back into your budget. Sorry, back into your financial analysis. So yes, you can export those into the statements themselves will go into both Excel and PDF. When you're actually in the analysis grid, we do also support CSV and everything like that. But you can also copy things to your clipboard and what have you if need be.
Okay, this is the last question I've got up on the screen at the moment. So if anyone does have a question, now's the time to type it in. This is from Martin. He's obviously a MYOB Greentree user. And I think you actually touched on this early on, Craig, but is the P&L template defined by Phocas, Greentree, or can we do it ourselves?
Well, actually, probably the answer is it's possibly all 3, but realistically, we take your ERP chart of accounts as the baseline initially, and then provide the training for you to make it your own. We do have some standard kind of international accounting standard templates that you could use if you want to in Phocas, but what we do find is that the baseline statement that you have in, say, Greentree is going to be your best bet, and when you need to make changes to it, you can. Norm, I can also see, I don't know, not sure if it's coming up on your side, I can see actually a number of other questions that have been asked, which I can quickly go through.
Okay, it's not coming up on my screen.
No,
go for
it. So there is a question, can Phocas be used to produce annual financial statements for stakeholders? Yes, you can. We do have a number of customers that do exactly that. We're happy to have a bit more of a one-on-one chat about the particulars about what you might want to see and show you how you can actually do that. Today's demo was more just a sneak peek. There is a question also around the versioning of Greentree, which Norm, that might be something worth you might want to touch on what versions we can get data out of in Greentree.
Okay, unfortunately I'm not a techo, so I don't keep up with all the different versions. As my wife puts it, I look after all the pretty pictures in the marketing area. But if you send me an email direct, I will make sure that that question is answered directly for you.
Yeah. So, but just to maybe add a bit of comfort around it, we've been working with Greentree customers for many years, so on various versions. I know different versions do make data available in slightly different ways, so we can always work with whatever version you're on, but some of the more later versions do make the process a little bit easier. There's also a question around multi-currency, which we didn't actually touch on, but absolutely, we do support multi-currency. We will take data in many different currencies. So Phocas as a business, we actually operate in 3 different currencies. So you can actually have local currencies and reporting currencies and control which users see what. And that we can also have different FX rates for, say, the P&L and the balance sheet, for example, where we need to have something different. There is another question here around how we access the data. So whether you're using Mob Advanced or Greentree, and whether you're running on a local server or you've got something externally hosted or cloud-based, we really don't actually mind. We can take data pretty much from anywhere and provide it inside Phocas. So you don't need to worry be only on a cloud version to be actually able to use Phocas. Quite a few questions here. Going to be here for a little bit. So there is also some questions around drilling down. So yes, we can drill right down to the lowest level of data available. So when I was drilling down on the finance side into the journal level, that is the lowest level available in our GL data. When we talk around sales or purchasing or manufacturing, the lowest line level detail available in that data set is what you'll be able to drill down into in Phocas. Now, there's been a couple of questions actually on drilling into or pushing data back. So Phocas works with, we obviously work with Greentree and Advanced, but we actually support hundreds of different ERP systems. So writing back directly into those systems from our product is not something we do as an analytics business. But like we mentioned when Norm was asking questions about exports earlier, we can make that data available. We can also automate making that data available. And if you want to get that back into Greentree, for example, that's something you can work with Star on actually getting that data back in. We will always make your data available to you. So that's some of the, just quickly running through the other questions. If we don't get to all of your questions, we'll happily reach out to you directly to answer those. There was just a quick question: can Phocas be used as an analytics tool and reporting tool? Absolutely, it can. Hopefully, after this webinar, we will hold another session where we can take you through some of the more operational style analytics that Phocas can be used for.
Okay. Well, firstly, my apologies. Technology has let us down. I can see the chat section, but the Q&A panel failed to come up for me. First time that's happened. As Craig said, we will certainly get back to you with all of the questions that we haven't managed to address today. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for the Star Business Solutions and Phocas software presentation on financial reporting, budgeting and forecasting. I'd also like to thank Craig specifically for doing all the heavy lifting for me today. Someone from either Star or Phocas may be in touch with you in the coming weeks to check on whether or not you want to know more about today's presentation. However, please feel free to email myself, and I can ensure that any follow-up questions or issues are addressed for you, or I'll pass them on to the appropriate person who knows more than myself. So once again, thank you. Have a great day, and we'll see you for the next STAR webinar in a month's time.
Thank you very much for your time.